have so much going on in my life right now. I'm trying to finish up the harvesting. I'm so behind in my writing project, and I'm trying to offer all of my loyal viewers informative videos each week. I really need to focus. I'm so happy that I had what I needed in my cupboard to mix up a small incense blend. Burning that will keep my mind clear and focused and help me maintain some kind of emotional balance. That, along with a nice cup of green tea with lemongrass, and I'm ready to begin my day. Greetings, everyone. Oh, I had a wonderful day last Saturday. We went to a metaphysical fair a friend of ours was sponsoring. She had just moved into a brand new shop, and she held a fair, invited a dozen or more local vendors to present their wares, and it was wonderful. We went to try to give them some support, and oh, I felt it was really a lovely day. It was a beautiful day, nice location. Her shop is lovely. But I had a little bit of a problem when I got there, because I thought I really need to buy something, but what was I going to buy? Here I am giving videos about how we're going to only have what we need, and I have so many things already, and so many things that they were selling, as nice as they were, are things that I make for myself or things that I really don't use. So I was in a little bit of a pickle, but I did find something. I finally found something, just the right thing to buy. And I'll share that with you at the end of this video. But right now, I want to get into the subject of today's video. And that is, we're talking about the crafting of witch. What is the witch? What is witchcraft? What do we mean by the term witchcraft? What I mean by it is, what kind of things do we need to practice at being a witch, to work at being a witch? What kind of things do we need for that? Well, I have it narrowed down into a few categories, and we're going to go over each one. What you will need, of course, depends on what kind of a witch you are or what kind of witch you want to be. Okay, so some of these categories will apply to one or more kinds of a witch. The essentials of witchcraft. I think every witch would agree that in her cupboard it is essential that she or he has candles on hand all the time, no matter what kind of witchcraft you are practicing, whether you are just doing ritual witchcraft, or you're actually doing spell work, or you're doing casting circles, or just having shrines or healing spaces of healing or meditation. Everybody uses candles. There's no argument there, but there is like a division. There seems to be a little bit of a division about the type of candles, first of all. And for me, a big part of that involves whether the candles are scented or not. I personally go out of my way to get candles that are not scented. I know everybody loves candles. They talk about them, they share them, they're anxious to show you the candles that they buy. Oh, it smells like pumpkin spice, or it smells like cinnamon buns, or whatever. Oh, lavender. And I understand there is a time and place perhaps for scented candles, but for me, I don't like it, because I like, just like on the dinner table, I want to be able to taste my food and smell my food that I'm eating. I don't want to smell roses when I'm eating, taco salad. I don't want to smell that. I don't think that goes together. So I like the scented candles, and then I like to apply my scents to my crafting in the form of incense or oils, those kind of things. So I prefer an unscented candle, but that's personal preference. That's only personal preference. As far as the type of candle you need, the actual type, some witches really think of one kind. I mean, that is the taper candle. I think the taper candle is probably what comes to mind first when we think of candles, because that is, again, what we see in everybody's homes, whether, maybe on the dinner table. My father would not have dinner ever, no matter what we were having. We could be having, tomato soup and a bologna sandwich. He wanted a candle on the table. That was just his thing. And we always had candles. Most often they were tapers, and that is a good use for taper candles. That is a good use for them on the dinner table or on the ritual table, on the altar. And I think, other than that, most taper candles are just not useful because you have to have your eye on the taper at all times. It's possible for a candle to not burn evenly. It's possible for a candle to lose its shape, a tall candle. It might, especially if it's been in a hot house, it might start to lean towards one way or another. It is possible that, the only candle holder you have is kind of small for the long taper. We've had that happen in this house where somebody used a long taper candle and with a small holder, and it fell over. It fell over, and we don't want that to happen. They're just not the safest candle unless you have your eye on it all the time. That's why I say yes on the dinner table. They look lovely. They serve a good purpose, and on the ritual table. Other than that, I say don't use them. In my opinion, don't even bother with them. The second kind of a type of candle that I consider, is a pillar candle, and by that we mean a tall, thick. It's a tall candle. Usually it can be short, but it's a thicker, rounder in diameter candle. And you saw those on the altar last week when I showed you pictures of the altar in this room, lighting those candles. We use those on altars all the time, where they're very often where they're going to be used over and over again. We light them, we use them, extinguish them, and they can stay there. They're very handy to have. They're good. They have a nice service. You can decorate the outside. You can inscribe the outside. You can. They come in a lot of different colors, in a lot of different heights, and they look lovely grouped together. But again, they have to be attended at all times. Okay. Something that's very popular that does not require quite as much attention is a tea light. And everybody knows what a tea light is. And I used thousands of tea lights in the 20 years that I was involved in camping with the SCA, because those were things that we used in our lanterns and lamps, and our glass lanterns and glass lamps, where we could light them and just let them burn out. They're really safe to use. You can use them for spell work. A lot of people like them for spell work because they do burn quickly. They don't last long. But I don't use them as often indoors, mostly because they're kind of boring. To me, they're just kind of boring. But they're good. They're a good option, and they're very affordable. You can get 100 of them at IKEA in a bag for just a couple dollars, I believe. It's very affordable. I do like a container candle. I love a container candle for a lot of reasons. You saw my husband using a container candle on the Buddha altar we have for healing, our healing altar in the front hall. I love them. They do have to be attended when they're inside, but you don't have to keep your eye on it every second like you would a taper candle, because they are in glass. So it's just something you have to keep attention to, but you don't have to keep attention on, if you know what I'm saying. And they're relatively safe when they're out of doors. Indoors, though, you do need to attend them. Like I said, you can't just light them and let them burn. They're 9 days. The reason they're called novena candles that size is because they're meant to burn for 9 days, but not 9 days without stopping. I would use it. I would light it. If I was doing a healing altar, for instance, a healing for a person, like when my husband was ill, we would light his candle, and when I was at home, I would light the candle. And before I went to bed or had to leave the house for whatever reason, I would extinguish the candle and then relight it again the next time that I was able to attend to it. Okay, that's the best way to use them. We like to use them on our elemental altars when we have ritual, because I have a room where I have a lot of open windows, and most of the time the windows are open, or at least a lot of them are open, and they are much more efficient to use in that situation. If I were to use a taper candle that close to the window, they would just melt. The wax would melt all over the place, and the candle would burn very fast, or blow out, or something would happen. They work very well for us, and that for that reason, and so that's my main use for them. My absolute favorite candle, I'm not sure why, I kind of collect them, are the short tapers. They're often called chime candles, or they're also called spell candles, and the reason being they are short. They're tapers technically, but they're only short. How tall? 6 inches, 4 inches. They come in a couple of different lengths. But the ones I use are about ready. They burn something like an hour and a half total. They come in all different colors, which I particularly like for when I do candle spells. Now, you've seen I have a couple videos on this channel where I do use those, and they're beautifully, they're small, nice size that I can dress and put herbs on the outside or whatever on the outside that I want, and I can use it in a holder. I can just stick it to a tile and allow it to burn down, and I really, really like to use those a lot. But again, they have to have attention. You can't light it and walk away. So that's something that's the other reason for a spell. I like to have it completely burn out. The second category of must-haves for your witch's cupboard, no matter what kind of witch you call yourself, is the category of herbs, roots, and powders. Now, these might be simple ingredients, for instance, just jars of herbs, dried herbs, and flowers, etc., that you have in your cupboard, like I do, if you wish to make your own items. Or this could be purchased items. You can purchase these things at a lot of places. Really good. You can get them from a lot of other witches and a lot of other vendors that sell really good products, quality products if you do your research. I have many videos here that show you how to make, if you want to make your own items. I show you how to do most of them. But anyway, this category is going to include things like incenses, of course, and in the form of whether it's a loose incense blend or it's a formed cone or it's a stick of incense. It doesn't matter, okay? But we use them for incenses. These are also items that we use for protection. We do protection, put them in for protection, burn them for protection, dress things for protection, put them in things. Cleansing, or like we think of smudging, or spell work, okay? If you do not choose to make your own items for these purposes, I just caution you to use caution when purchasing from other sources. Many of the incenses, for instance, contain a lot of artificial fragrance, artificial perfumes, and all kinds of chemicals and things. And I want you to be very careful with that. Some people have sensitivities to that. And some of them don't even really contain the item that they say that they contain. Like if you're looking for frankincense, make sure that it's really frankincense that you're buying. Okay. Another caution that I want to give you is if you're going to buy you're not going to grow your own herbs, but you're going to buy herbs because you want to use them to make your own blends out of, or you might want to buy herbs to use in tinctures, to make for tinctures or oils, those kind of things. That's wonderful. And I don't grow everything that I use, but make sure that you're acquiring only organic items. That is very, very important. It's important enough if we want to use them in an incense, because again, we're burning chemicals and artificial things we don't want to burn. But secondly, if you're going to use it for tinctures, it is imperative that you use organic herbs. And you need to use organic dry herbs. It's very, very important. When you are making a tincture, you're putting your herbs or flowers into a solution of alcohol, very strong alcohol. The reason being, you want to draw the nutrients that is in all the properties, all the goodness from the herb out, and the alcohol will do that. And it will, by the time you're done, there's pretty much nothing left of that herb. It's just a frazzled bit of spent herb. There's no goodness. Hardly can recognize what it was. So everything is drawn out of it. If you use fresh herbs in tinctures, the water is going to be extracted from the fresh herbs first before anything else. And it's going to water down your tincture. So you're not going to have as potent of a tincture as you would have if you use a dried product. If you're going to infuse your herbs in oils, for instance, to make either salves or just oils or soaps or whatever you're going to use the oils for, you have to use dried herbs and flowers. You cannot use fresh. The amount of time that they sit in the oil in order to infuse the oils it will cause the herbs or flowers to grow rancid, and you could get a lot of contamination in that oil. It would be bad. It would just be very bad, very bad. You have to have dried substances for that. Also, I want to tell you, if you're going to make incense blends or cones, I don't make sticks. I do make cones, and I did show you how to do that on here, and that's possible. But simply, just the incense blends, a dried herbal blend that you would burn on a charcoal disc, for instance, that you see me use all the time. That's really easy to do, but you need to do a little bit of research before you do it. You must have a proper ratio between the amount of what the herb or the leaf or the flower is, and for instance, a wood or a resin as well. Because the reason you have a combination is the wood catches very fast. The wood will cause it to burn, but the resin will slow it down, and some woods will even slow it down so that it can burn for a long time. Did you ever light an incense and it lights and then it's gone in just a matter of seconds? It fizzles out. That's because that's just because it doesn't have a good ratio. You can't just take one thing like basil and dry it and put it on a disc and expect to get an incense from it. You can expect to get burned basil, but you can't expect to get a basil incense, because basil incense would have to have some other things in it to make it. If you do it in cone form, you can stabilize it with things that don't have any other fragrances of their own, and that's very possible to do. But again, you have to do your research before you're attempting to do that. Easily done. And I have a lot of information on my channel in previous videos where you can learn how to do it yourself. The very last consideration when doing herbs and roots and powders is to be conscious of what you have. Be aware of what you have available to you. What you have, I don't know where you live, but where you live, I'm sure you have things different to you, available to you, that I don't have here in Southern California. I have unique things here, you have unique things there. And of course, the most obvious that we talk about all the time is something like California white sage, which is just, that is native to where I live. But there are people that are just, we're gonna they're depleting our source of it. It is natural to our habitat, but it's going to be gone if we don't be careful. People are harvesting it and selling it, and they're not doing so in a conscientious and responsible way. And because people think that California white sage is the only thing you can use for smudging, that's absurd. There are so many other things that you can use to smudge. Of course, a lot of other people think of Palo Santo in the same way. A lot of people like Palo Santo. Again, this is not a sustainable source. We have to be very careful how much of that we're using, because we don't want it to be depleted. We don't want the source of it to be gone. Okay, that would be terrible. But look and see around you what you can use. In the case of California white sage, garden sage is, first of all, a sage, and there are so many varieties of sages, and each of them are equally effective for smudging or for other uses. Okay. Now, we cannot use a garden sage. We can use a garden sage as to replace California white sage, but we cannot use California white sage to replace garden sage, like for instance in cooking, like in your stuffing for your Thanksgiving turkey. That would be awful. It's not edible. It's not the kind of sage that you eat. It's the kind of sage that you burn. So you need to know the difference. But if you have limited space, find one thing that you can use for different purposes. And that's where we get to the real secret to this managing your herbs and roots and powders, is what do you have, first of all, and how can it be used? This is the joy of being a witch. This is the big, happy thing of being part of being a witch. When you discover something in your yard, growing in your yard, like stinging nettles, and everybody else is trying to get rid of stinging nettles, it's very healthy for you. It's beneficial for you. It tastes delicious. It's a very beneficial green, like any other green. It can be substituted in its place. It's wonderful for making tinctures. It's wonderful using in incenses, and it's wonderful magically in using in spell work. It is so wonderful. That is the joy of finding something that other people are tearing apart and destroying, and using and find that you can use it in so many different ways. We can do the same thing with simple common herbs like rosemary, lavender, basil, thyme, oregano. These things are very, very commonly used for cooking. They're commonly used. We use them in our soaps, we use them in our tinctures, we use them in our oils, we use them in our incenses. So do a little bit of sleuthing around your neighborhood or in your yard. Start in your yard. Watch for things that pop up in the spring. Watch for things that, mysteriously pop up in the bed or the areas around you, and see what is it. Do some research and see what they are. See if they can be edible. See if they can be used for magically. See if they can be used medicinally, and you go from there. There's where you really start being an actual real crafting witch. Now, two other things that I use, if we're going to be talking about the powders, I personally only use really two powders, and I don't use them a lot, but I do use them. And I want to say that this is not necessary, and you can purchase both of these items. I sell them in my cupboard on my website, but you don't need to use them. But I want to explain they're very easy to make, very easy to make, and I have a really good video that tells you how to make them both. I will link below, down in the description box. But the first one is Cascarilla powder. And Cascarilla powder is something that is used for cleansing and protection. And this is what I sell it like this. But it is simply a white powder. I hope you can see it. Or in my case, it's sort of off-white. It is simply powdered, dried eggshells. So what I do is, when you have the eggs, everybody has eggs, you take your eggs, and when you're finished, instead of throwing away the shells, I hope you compost them if you don't, instead of throwing them away. But we don't compost all of those. A lot of parts we put in the oven and bake them a little bit, dry them out really well, and bake them a little bit to change their texture a little bit. And then we break them apart. We put them into bits, and we feed them back to our chickens as a really good source of calcium. Okay, but if I took those little bits, and I show you in my video, and I powder them, I put them in a spice grinder or something, and powder them. I have a really lovely powder, which is really good to use for all kinds of protections and all kinds of cleansing. And I tell you what I can use it for on that video that I will link to below. But anybody can do this. Anybody can do this. Go to the store, buy some eggs if you don't have any, and make yourself some Cascarilla powder. Okay. The second thing that I make, that anybody can make, and I show you how to do it. I don't have much in here. I have to make some more. This is witch's black salt. And this is a very, very, very powerful. It's like salt, is so powerful. It has so many properties, and we use that for so many things. This is a very powerful salt that is used to create a barrier between yourself and anything negative. Okay, it's very good to use around if you're doing spell work or you're doing some kind of protection, magic, or even ritual where you want to be really careful and really protect and form a really tight circle of protection around yourselves. You might want to make a circle of this black salt. Okay, so it's very, very good. Again, made from very simple ingredients that we all have. Every kind of witch has these ingredients, so anybody can do that too. So look that up and add it to your cupboard. No matter what kind of witch you are, you might want to add these two powders to your cupboard. The third category is really very simple, and that is oils. Why would we need oils in our practice? We don't always need oils, but I recommend them very much if you're going to do any kind of crafting, if you're going to do any kind of healing or prosperity, even if you're just, setting up little altars for that or little shrines for that. Rituals, of course, you usually want to have something to consecrate your candles with, or not always, but most people do oil their candles, dress their candles in certain ways when we use them for ritual. So you don't need anything real fancy. Some witches only use something simple like olive oil, or something simple like grapeseed, or maybe avocado oil, something like that. That is good all-purpose oil that they would have, and they would use it to dress candles or whatever. They would, their intention would come from themselves, and they wouldn't have any special. There would be no special ingredients in the oil, so it's really not necessary unless you want to have something. You would also, they're good for, I think when I do spell work, I put the oil on the candle, and then the herbs or powders or whatever else I want to use as part of the spell will adhere to the candle. So it's practical as well as intentional for purpose. Okay. If you're going to only use white candles, for instance, if you're not going to use special candles for your spell work, I would really recommend using um, some kind of special oils rather than just a plain oil. I would. You don't need a lot of things. You can have some. It's just kind of a general purpose oil that will help consecrate your candles, or I have an oil that I use that I sell with the spell kits that I send out. That is just its purpose is for that. It's just general spells, whatever you do, and then when you apply the oil to, it's a special blend that I created to work in any kind of spells, and then other kind of herbs and powders that I would apply to the candle would be determined by whatever this kind of spell I was doing. But the oil was generic, so to speak, for any kind of a spell. Okay. Um, Now, you don't need a lot. I think it might be beneficial to have more than that. It might be beneficial to have maybe something an oil that would attract to you, and another oil that would uh, push away. Protect you from or push things away from you. That would be probably really beneficial. So in that case, maybe two more oils. So two or three is probably sufficient. I have about 6 or 8 oils, but I don't, all told, you know. But remember, I do sell them, so I have different oils for different people. But you can look again at the oils on my channel, and I do give recipes for some of the things. I offered a workshop. I have a workshop. The recording is up on my website if you want to see. We're talking about how we made them in a little more detail. But they're very simple to make, and no matter what kind of an oil you're using. Okay, so that's a really simple category, and of course it depends on what you're going to be using them for. Somebody who's doing spell work is going to be using a lot more oils than somebody who's just wanting to dress candles for their healing altar or for their prosperity altar or something like that. And finally, my last category is tools. What kind of tools does a witch need? Now, this is a witch crafting witch, a witch who crafts. We're not talking about a ritual witch here, and this is a very important point because there are tools that are specific to ritual or specific to casting a circle, which you do not use for any other reason. One of the most obvious would be an athame. An athame is used for ritual, it is used for casting a circle. It is not used as a cutting tool. It's not used as a cutting tool. If you want a knife that cuts, you can use a bouline. You can use different things. I use scalpels. I use cutting tools like that I had for pottery, trim tools that I use for that. I use all kinds of things for that. You can use, we also talking about trimming tools like wick trimmers, which are important, especially if you're going to use candles like container candles that you want to go down inside. They're angled so that you can cut the wick. It'll fit down in the jar and cut the wick. You can't fit scissors down in a jar, if you know what I'm saying. You need a mortar and pestle, at least one mortar and pestle, a nice heavy one for grinding things. A small heat gun is useful for certain things, depending on what you're trying to do. And a low temperature glue gun is very important. I use that for a lot of things. And I show you me using those tools all the time when we're making different things. We also need to have some kind of an inscribing tool, especially when we're using candles. We're dressing candles, we often inscribe something onto the candle. Something, it could be as part of a spell, it could be an intention. I have a working candle on my altar in here that has an inscription because that candle is in service to me on my altar. It does not represent deity, it just represents That is the first candle that I light. And I light the God and the Goddess candles from that. I light the incense from that. Everything is from that. That's the first candle I light. And then I light, and the last one I extinguish. I don't use lighters like those, I don't know, butane lighters or whatever they are. I don't like to use those on spell candles and things. I like to use matches. But often I will light my working candle or a working candle from this butane lighter, if I need to. And then I can light the other candles from that. So that's what I use that for. So inscribing tools are very important. We can write messages of all kinds of intentions. And you can use anything for that. I love to use a needle tool that I had again for pottery when I was doing pottery. You can use something like you could use a pencil if you wanted to, the point of a pencil or pen, or a small awl would be helpful. I also used a simple 10-penny or a 20-penny nail, which if you happen to have around is really good, that you can use to write with on the candle. So the reason is you inscribe whatever is your intention on the candle, and then when the candle burns, it adds even more to that. And that brings me to my final point. What did I buy at the metaphysical fair? And I want to show you that. And this is the coolest thing, because you might have seen, this is the candle that I did inscribe. And they had a candle such as this at the fair where they asked everybody who was there to, if they chose to inscribe some kind of a sigil or something on the candle, or write a word or whatever they wanted to on there. But then they had this special product which they called candle schmear. This, by the way, was from the shop, another Long Beach shop called Eye of the Cat, which was there at the Points of Light fair, which we went to. Anyway, this particular one is dragon schmear because it contains dragon's blood. But this is something that was so cool because they had this product there, and I thought, oh, I could buy that because this would help me with this video. And they ended up with this little thing of schmear, they called it, which is like it's made with dragon's blood. And then whatever they put in it, I'm not sure what else is in here. But I can't read the print in this room. But anyway, they said you could take this on where you inscribed on your candle, put some on your finger, and rub it on the candle. Rub it into the candle. And then you can see the sigil, perhaps. I hope it shows up here. Does that show up? Does that even show up? Let me see. There we go. There we go. A sigil for peace. Peace. I'm going to do something with this candle later for peace in both Ukraine and also, of course, now in Israel, where our hearts go out to the people in these two places in the world. So anyway, if you use it in a group of people who are inscribing, you don't want to inscribe on top of somebody else's inscription. So this is really handy. Like, you don't have to see it all the time. And I thought this was so neat. So anyway, perfect timing for our video. So something I bought that I did not even think I needed, that I did need. Okay, there you go. So that's today's video. I hope it was helpful. I will link to a few videos, particularly the one on the Cascarilla powder and the black salt, in case you're interested in making that. But also stay tuned, because next week we're going to be talking about the witch who casts spells. We all want to cast some spells. Even if you haven't casted spells, you might want to start casting spells. Okay, so watch for that video that happens next week. And until then, I'm Rebecca. Thank you so much for watching. And I'm sending you all the blessings from the Crone House.